Chapter 5, Little Brother. Oh boy. Where are we? We're in Spencer's room. Oh my gosh. He likes girls that play baseball. I never thought we'd see Spencer's room. He's got such a tiny bed compared to me. Baby of the family confirmed. You get the tiny bed. Huh. He's actually got a wardrobe. That's pretty cool. Well, what's the verdict? It was stupidly early, and I was half leaning on Spencer's bed, listening to him snore. Wrapped in a blanket and trying to stay awake, I was sort of half dozing as my sleepy brain replayed the events from yesterday. There had been a lot of panic, hurried explanations, and more panic involved. Adrian, a different sort of vampire than Mark, had drained Spencer's energy to the point of knocking him unconscious. But he would recover, so they told me. Life energy replenished daily, so it was just a matter of him sleeping off the exhaustion. Okay, recharge the batteries. I had convinced Mom and Dad he had gotten sick after school and that we'd come straight home together. Mom practically had kittens, and there were talks of doctors and ERs. I don't even know how I'd managed to convince her that he just needed sleep. And to be honest, I was sick with worry myself. He'd had his life energy drained. That seemed pretty serious, no matter how the others tried to downplay it. I was also angry and frustrated. Spencer was hurt. Again. Because of me. I mean, he really kind of got hurt because of himself. If he hadn't been stalking you and just talked to you like a normal human being, maybe he wouldn't have had his life drained by a vampire. And this time I knew what happened and had to lie about it. I hated it. So was there any rearranging of memories that went along with this? I'd fallen asleep once and dreamed that he died. I didn't want to risk that again and was trying to keep myself awake. I poked Spencer's cheek. Even listening to you whine is better than seeing you like this. I had no idea how he was going to handle it all when finally he woke up. I didn't know if he'd even remember what happened. At any rate, he definitely wouldn't remember what had happened after he'd lost consciousness. Spencer was lying on the sofa unconscious, mouth hanging open slightly as he slept. Adrian was fretting in the corner, like he should be. He'd put his dirty gloves back on and was looking more than a little worried. And I was crouched next to Spencer, doing my best to not have a complete emotional breakdown in front of everyone.
He's just sleeping.
Then why can't I wake him up? If he's just sleeping, I should be able to wake him up. What exactly happened? What did Adrian do to him? Mark knelt beside me with a long sigh.
Adrian drained some of his life force when he grabbed his wrist. And not just a small amount based on your brother's condition.
What?
Please listen to me. While I understand your concern, your brother is going to be fine. He's alive. His life force will replenish itself and he'll wake up as if nothing happened. He's just tired. And I don't believe this was intentional.
How is that not intentional? How do you unintentionally drain someone's life force out of them? Mark grabbed my face and forced me to look at him, holding both cheeks firmly between his hands.
Nora, please calm down and listen. Vitae naturally siphons small amounts of life energy simply by touching other creatures. Unless they specifically focus on not doing it, it's a natural function for them. The reason current school regulations demand that they wear gloves has to do with that.
So it's actually a regulation that he has to wear gloves. Interesting. Then why were his gloves off? Why wasn't he wearing them?
They were dirty. I took them off while I was in the drama room earlier.
I feel, though, like, if it's a regulation that you have to wear gloves, surely you would have, like, a spare pair of gloves in case there's, like, a tear, or they're dirty, or you lose one, or whatever. Like, you should have I would think you'd probably have, like, a backup pair. Just speaking to somebody who had, like, glasses and couldn't see. I had, like, 2 pairs of glasses. You probably should have 2 pairs of gloves. To his credit, they actually were smeared with grime and dust. What were you even doing that your gloves got into that sort of condition? It wasn't like he was lying about it.
And I didn't think I was walking around the school with a human. I didn't think...
What does his being human have to do with it? Mark grimaced at that.
The rule is there to protect humans. The regulation doesn't apply to cryptic students. I'm really sorry. I lost control for a moment, that's all. I didn't know he would be so...
You bet on my brother!
I didn't mean to. Not like that.
It had been hard to get my mind around, really. The idea of someone feeding on my brother. But there it was. They had finally gotten me calmed down. I guess it helped that Adrian really did look quite remorseful and, well, scared. Mark actually also looked a bit worried about it. That was probably the only thing that had helped me keep it together. I mean, accidental or not, I imagine there could be some bad repercussions that could come from accidentally feeding on a human student. If they were both so worried about the consequences of stepping out of line, then I couldn't imagine Adrian actually trying to eat my brother in front of me. Unless he was counting on his extreme acting skills to cover up his misdeed. But I didn't think it was that. If his distress was an act, he really needed to win an Oscar for that performance. At any rate, with some convincing, I had agreed to not tell Velos exactly what had happened. Instead, we gave the excuse that Spencer fainted when he had seen the club room. Apparently, given my reaction to Ewan, Velos found it believable. Still not sure how I feel about that. There was one person I had insisted should know the truth, and that was Allie. They had agreed with only minor trepidation. She went along with our lie, at least for the time being. If not for Adrian's sake, then for Mark's. Because I had remembered what Mark had said before. When one vampire messes up, it affects them all. There was one condition to keeping it under wraps, though. If Spencer didn't wake up in the morning, and if he wasn't totally okay, I would go straight to Velos. I didn't really want Adrian to get into trouble if he hadn't meant to do it. And I definitely didn't want Mark affected by something someone else did. But Spencer was my priority, whether they liked that or not. I wasn't a vampire, and I didn't owe them loyalty. And I was tired of Spencer being hurt because of me. So, I was sitting in his bedroom freezing while my idiot brother slept like a log. Mom thought I insisted on sleeping there because I was worried about him. Apparently, it warmed her maternal heart to see us making up. And while it wasn't entirely untrue, I was mostly worried he'd wake up alone and freak out. At least if I was nearby, I could contain the freak out. Even if it meant holding a pillow over his face to mute the shouting. I mean, it's deserved considering the amounts of times he's done that to us. I closed my eyes, my head rolling forward on my arms. Wake up soon, you stupid brother. I'm so tired. So tired. I didn't know when I'd dozed off, but I was definitely dreaming. I was in Spencer's room, but everything was blurry and dim. And soft voices were filling my head. It was the same dream, the one where I was sleepwalking. But something was wrong. There was someone else. No, something else. I didn't know what it was, but I wasn't alone. I saw a flash of icy blue eyes. Those eyes. I knew those eyes. Something wiggled in the side of my vision. My head turned, though it didn't feel like I was the one turning it. A shadow slithered along the wall toward the window.
I said leave.
I jolted awake at the strange, raspy voice. My voice. I looked around the room cautiously. I was standing in the center of the bedroom, facing the window, just like in the dream. Ugh, sleepwalking. I was lucky I hadn't escaped to the outside. I'd forgotten to put Allie's herbs in the doorway. I glanced toward the bed where Spencer was still sleeping soundly. Everything else was quiet. Who opened the window? Frowning, I padded softly to it and peered outside. Maybe I'd done it while asleep, though I hadn't been standing near it when I woke up. That shadow in my dream went through here. I shut the window quickly. My eyes went wide when I saw what was in the yard below. Pale yellow lights, dozens of them, all drifting lazily around. I watched them curiously. Will-o'-the-wisps? Did Rule protect our brother? Somehow? Let's see. Wisps. There they are. Will-o'-the-wisps are fairy lights that some believe to be the souls of dead children. Some legends paint them as harmless lights, while others say they'll lead unwary travelers astray. Others have them feeding on people and draining them of their life force. It makes me wonder about the overlap between some fae and other cryptics like vampires. At any rate, apparently you can just throw some graveyard dirt at the lights to ward them off. Not really sure who keeps graveyard dirt in their pockets, but there you go. In my research, I'd read that they were a type of fae, but there were some disagreements on their exact nature. Were they evil, harmless, or what? They were all over down there. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. Pretty. I'd never seen anything like it before. I wondered if it was because we were getting closer to Samhain or something. They were beautiful. I closed my eyes, sending up a silent prayer that Spencer would wake in the morning and be fine. Mark had seemed pretty certain, but it was scary to see him so exhausted and difficult to wake up. I shivered and stepped away from the window, pulling the curtain closed. Returning to my spot by the bed, I wrapped myself into the blanket and decided I'd try to get some sleep.
Please make sure Spencer eats something when he wakes up.
I will.
I wish I could stay home. I have a signing today and an open house this afternoon that I can't cancel.
Mom, I got it. It'll be fine. Dad had already left. He was over at Grandma's helping out with something. With Mom leaving too, it meant Spencer and I would have the house to ourselves until the afternoon. Let's have a chat.
I don't want you getting sick too.
Does this really matter? I guess this probably plays more into the lie of he's sick than this one. Well, I've already been exposed to whatever he has. I mean, I slept next to his bed all night, so he had every opportunity to breathe his gross germs on me.
Thank you. That's encouraging.
I'm sure it's just some kind of 24-hour bug. He'll probably wake up and be his usual cranky self.
I want you to know I'm proud of you for taking care of him like this.
Well, he's obnoxious, but he's still my brother.
It's so cute you slept in his room.
You can say that because you didn't have to sleep on the floor.
You could have slept in your own room.
Nah, I was worried he might suffocate. His room smells like old socks. It's gross.
I'm sure it's not because you were worried.
Definitely not.
Please take care of each other today. I'll text to check on you later.
You're only going to be gone for a few hours. What could happen? Oh, Nora, never ask what could happen. You're just calling evil towards you. See, even Mom knows what's up.
It makes me really nervous when you say that.
Just go. I finally managed to shoo her out the door and sighed in relief when I heard her car pull out of the driveway. It was finally just me and Spencer. He was asleep again now, but sometime after my weird little sleepwalking thing, he'd awakened. It was right around dawn. He'd been awake enough to mumble something about how he'd known it all along, but not enough to do much else. He'd been asleep again in minutes. I fell blearily into one of the kitchen chairs, contemplating how much more coffee my system could handle before I turned into a jittery, nauseous mess. Maybe just one more cup. There was a gentle tap on the back door, and I jumped up to answer. As expected, it was Allie. She'd said she was going to stop by so we could both talk to Spencer. Excellent plan. I pulled the door open, stepping aside to let her in.
Whoa, you look like Death.
I feel like Death.
How is he?
Well, sleeping still. He's been mostly doing that since yesterday. He woke up around dawn, then went back to sleep. Want something to drink?
Just water.
I went to get a glass for her and decided to forgo another cup of coffee for myself. I got a glass of orange juice instead. Good call. Joining Allie at the table, I rubbed at my eyes. My head felt gross. That weird dream I'd had last night wasn't helping.
Worked out what you're going to tell him yet?
The truth. He's already figured out a lot of it. He had my journal and said he read it all. I had no idea he still remembered how to read that. After we had moved and was still trying to make up with him, I used to write him notes in our code trying to coax him to interact. Until he'd finally shouted at me to stop writing him messages in a weird code he couldn't even read anymore. How much of what we've been saying to each other was just lies these days?
Don't look so upset about it. We were going to tell him anyway.
I know. I just didn't think he would be like this.
Well, yesterday was a bit unexpected. I'm really sorry I didn't realize you were trapped.
Not your fault. I tried texting so many times, but my messages wouldn't go through.
Yeah, magic fields can really mess up things like radio waves. There's no reception in the library either, by the way.
Good to know.
So, I heard that tackle was amazing.
Ha ha. How's Adrian?
He was a bit shaken, I guess. He and Mark chatted with me for a while after dropping you off. He was relieved to hear we weren't going to tell Velos what really happened.
Well, that's still up for debate. If Spencer doesn't wake up soon...
He will. Adrian didn't drain that much from him.
Enough to knock him out for 16 hours straight.
You're really worried, aren't you?
You're not?
I am. Believe me, I am. But...
I know it wasn't intentional. At least, I don't think it was.
That's what Mark said. And since they don't like each other at all, I figure it must be true. I can't imagine Mark lying for him.
Yeah, Mark, I can't see lying. He's blunt, but he's not a liar. Me either. I can't see Mark lying at all, really.
You have a lot of confidence in him, huh?
I don't know about that. It's just... There was always the chance he just wanted to cover it up for his own sake, but I didn't think so. I didn't think that Mark would cover up for Adrian if he thought it was intentional. Setting aside things like doing the right thing, it was also more practical. If Adrian had intentionally drained someone this time, then covering it up now could lead to a much bigger incident down the line. I didn't think Mark would try to hide it unless he really thought it was a one-time thing. If there was one thing I'd learned about Mark, it was that above anything else, he didn't want to do anything that would have a long-term negative impact on the vampire community. And I do think he's a good guy. I don't think he'd take lying to Velos lightly. Why are you smiling at me like that?
You like him, don't you?
No! No, I definitely do not. I don't... No. And cut. Allie grinned at me. We are in chapter 5 now.
You totally like him.
I deflated slightly and sighed, looking away. I don't want to. I don't think he likes me.
I wouldn't say that. I've never seen him spend as much time with another person as he does with you. I think you must have gotten his attention somehow.
He just needed me to tutor him.
Maybe he just likes it that you don't suck up to him like other people do. To be honest, I've been waiting for you two to become official for a while now.
There is no way that's going to happen.
You never know.
I don't even know if I wanted to. I have a lot on my plate right now to be worrying about boys.
He's just one boy.
That makes it even worse.
Well, you two have plenty of time to work it out.
Did you happen to get any more details from Adrian about exactly what happened? That segue, though.
I don't think he told us anything you didn't already know. He'd been going through some old storage stuff in the drama club and got his gloves dirty. He's supposed to keep them on at all times while he's in the school, just as a precaution, but it was the end of the day, so he thought it would be fine. Seems like he thought Spencer was a cryptic, so he didn't worry about the possibility of touching him and draining him.
He did mention that.
Though I don't know why he'd assume that.
Well, that part is probably my fault.
How so?
He and I had talked about Spencer before, and I did kind of get the impression he thought Spencer was a club member. I didn't correct it at the time. I don't see why it matters. Is it just okay for him to go around sucking the life force out of cryptics?
Most of the rules we follow are for the protection of humans, not each other.
No wonder Mark says humans get favored status.
They're not usually a danger to us.
Only because most of them don't know about us.
I'm not saying I disagree with you, but that's how it is right now.
In any case, if Spencer really is a cryptic, I guess Adrian has nothing to worry about.
But we don't know if he is or not, and that's the issue.
He saw the club room. Clearly he has magicalness.
Or he could just have some kind of weak sight ability. I mean, he can't even see the brownie that lives here, right?
That's true. But you said you can't see them either, because Fae don't like to be seen.
If you're Fae, why would he be anything else but Fae?
If that's your reasoning, it doesn't make sense for him to be just a normal sensitive either.
If the two of you have Fae ancestry, you could have turned out Fae, and he could have turned out as a human with some mild sensitivity to magic. But still human.
That's way too confusing.
It always is when you have someone teetering on the edge of the two communities.
Anyway, Mark said vitae, or whatever, only siphon off small amounts of life force.
When they're not trying. I guess when Adrian grabbed Spencer's arm, instinct sort of kicked in.
Let's read about instinct. No. No. Read that. Done 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 that. Uh-oh. I can't have done all of that. Okay, it has to do with vampires, so it's gotta be somewhere around here. Okay, we've definitely read that. I think we've read that before. We've definitely read about Raven. We've read about them being hungry. This is all, and then we read about Sanguine. It's here. Okay, there we go. Found it! Vitae are a less common type of vampire that feeds off life energy. They don't have to bite people like blood-drinking types, but can simply siphon off energy via touch. In a lot of ways, they're far more dangerous than a sanguine. I mean, if someone tries to bite you, you can at least fight back. But if someone is able to drain out all your energy just by touching, you might not even realize you were being attacked until it was too late. Good point. But why all of a sudden? I've seen him without his gloves before. The first day he really talked to me, he was running around without them.
Really? That's odd.
Yeah, come to think of it, he touched my hand while we were up in the club room. He definitely did not go all instinct on me. He just yanked his hand back like he was burned or something.
Huh. That's weird.
Then he told Mark I wasn't to his taste.
Maybe he doesn't like the taste of fairy.
It tastes like sparkles and pixie dust. Gross.
Let's see. Are we gonna read about how fairies taste? There we go. Life energy. Life energy is a type of spirit energy emitted by all living things, no matter how small or large. Plants, animals, people, and even the planet itself are constantly emitting this energy. There are some creatures out there that feed on it. Not just vampires, but all sorts of fae and other cryptics as well.
It's not like he ever gets to eat properly anyway. I imagine that when he touched Spencer and drained out that first bit of life energy, he lost control.
He doesn't get to eat properly?
We haven't quite figured out how to bottle life energy yet. And since feeding without someone's permission is illegal, you can imagine that Vitae like him don't exactly get to sit down to a proper meal.
How does he live then, if he can't eat?
They can metabolize normal food, you know. It just sort of leaves them in a weakened state.
That's what he meant about the whole drinking thing. Is that why he doesn't seem as strong as Mark? He also doesn't seem to have the same bloodhound level sense of smell.
Basically, yeah.
He looked really scared about the whole thing. Just shocked and scared. Mark too.
Originally, part of Stone Circle's purpose was to help cryptics like Adrian learn to control themselves and blend in better. Some mistakes didn't really have the repercussions they have now. I mean, having some kind of safe haven for them to learn is kind of important, especially for natural vampires since they struggle with control anyway.
Do they now? Because Mark has made it quite clear that he doesn't struggle with control at all.
Well, if he said that, he's lying through his pointy teeth. It's pretty well known that vampires, especially natural ones, actually do have issues with that.
Well, he has gone on and on about how there's no way he'd ever want to eat live food.
You two have some seriously weird conversations.
I know. Believe me, I know.
Listen, natural vampires really struggle with learning to control themselves. Especially Vitae, since they actually have to focus to turn their powers off. It's not like Mark, who can just opt to keep his teeth to himself. Adrian has to actively choose to stop the draining of life energy when he touches someone, or he has to avoid touching other people. You can imagine that kind of control doesn't come naturally.
So he has to wear the gloves.
Well, that rule is only a couple of years old. Since Vitae don't normally drain enough energy to even be noticeable, being at school was considered a good opportunity to help them learn. But the school has already had some issues with the vampire students, so they're not really very lenient with this sort of thing anymore.
A couple of years, huh? Alex. Something with Alex, right?
How did you...
Adrian mentioned him, actually. I haven't heard much. I just know he was involved in something, and it affected everyone.
Oh man. Something is right. And it wasn't just Alex. Adrian neglected to mention his brother was involved in that too, and several other vampire students.
Ah, so the plot thickens. Oh, really? He did neglect to mention that.
Well, that was a huge drama, and the repercussions were pretty far-reaching. Like I said, Stone Circle used to be a haven where we could learn to control our abilities and blend in. Now there are so many rules geared toward just keeping the non-cryptic students safe and protecting the secret. It feels less like a school for us and more like...
A school for them? She made a face at that.
It's not us versus them.
I think that probably depends on who you ask. I leaned my head on my hand. What happened with Alex anyway?
Well, all things considered, I guess you should probably know. Just don't tell Mark I told you this, okay?
Okay.
Alex is his cousin.
I knew that much. Adrian mentioned it.
Well, he'd lived with Mark pretty much since they were kids. His parents were killed in... an accident. The Love family has a lot of enemies in the vampire community.
Because of their involvement with that whole rebellion and founding the NPRA?
I'm surprised you know about that, but yes. So for their protection, Mark and Alex spent their whole lives basically homeschooled and secluded in their estate. I don't know all the details, but they were apparently targeted. A lot.
That's awful.
Yeah, well, they joined Stone Circle 2 years ago. I guess his parents thought they should learn to interact with humans and just be normal. It was kind of hard for them both. You think Mark is cranky now. You should have seen him 2 years ago. Alex was pretty much the same. But they're vampires. They can charm people pretty easily, whether they intend to or not. It's an inherent ability.
Probably easier to eat someone that's dazzled by your gorgeous face and blue eyes.
Yeah, I'd say so. Anyway, Mark tried to keep to himself, but Alex was really popular. He seemed to be adjusting so much better than Mark. But he wasn't adjusting at all, really. He and some of the other vampires formed a little group that would target other students. Feed on them. Repeatedly. Alex started the whole thing, apparently. They were really careful and secretive about it at first. No one suspected anything. But it really quickly spiraled out of control. Vampires have this thing called a raven? Like, from ravenous.
I've heard about that. It's a prey that they mark for themselves.
Yeah, well, they created quite a few of them.
Mark said it's illegal to do that.
It is. Ravens are like slaves. That's why regulating vampire biting incidents is so tricky. Sometimes it only takes once or twice for you to properly be under a vampire spell.
So if you say yes once, you may not get a chance to say no ever again.
Right. Anyway, Ethan, Adrian's brother, he got really carried away. The thing is, Vitae are really strong when they're well fed. Way stronger than sanguines, blood drinkers. The others said they tried to stop him, but one of the ravens ended up in the hospital. In a coma.
Jeez.
That was what started the investigation. When the whole thing came to light, it was just so many students that were involved. It was almost like a cult. The vampires insisted that the human ravens had volunteered, that they were willing and had fully consented. The agency didn't care, and there was no way for them to prove any of that. All the vampire students involved were arrested. Mark's family was able to get Alex's sentence reduced on the grounds that he was being manipulated by the others and didn't fully understand what he was doing. The others weren't so lucky. After that, a lot of new rules were put in place, like the gloves. Vitae went from being able to get at least some nutrition from their ability to naturally siphon small amounts of life energy to nothing. To have such strict rules put in place almost goes against the core values of the school administration, but they had to comply with the agency's orders. And the agency was really intent on protecting the humans. They felt it was a clear case demonstrating that we are a danger to them and not the other way around. Enforcement across town became more stringent too, not just at the Stone Circle. It really shook up the relationship between the agency and the vampire community. Anyway, most of the student body thought it was something drug-related. The paranormal students were completely divided on the matter. The vampire students who weren't involved, a lot of them felt the new rules were too harsh, and that the others were just following the natural order of things. Vampires feed on humans. They create these devoted servants. That's what they do. And Mark got a lot of hate for his family getting Alex off the hook.
I mean, yeah, it's not fair, but it's kind of pointless to say that. There is like an especial bias to vampires. Is it because there's so many of them, or why? Why are vampires so discriminated against? I mean, making people like Adrian wear gloves? How do they justify that level of intolerance? Not that I like the idea of people sucking out everyone's life force, but it doesn't sound like it was an issue on a day-to-day basis.
I agree with you on this one too. I get why the decision was made, but I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair they tried to enforce it outside the school as well.
I'm starting to get why Mark is so bitter toward humans. It does feel like they're given precedence over the needs and comfort of cryptics. I mean, I don't know. I understand why, but it doesn't feel right.
It's a tough call. I guess humans get precedence because they don't even know they could be in danger just by touching another student, you know?
Yeah. Man, it's scary thinking that most of society goes through the world totally unaware of all these hidden dangers. Makes you wonder if this secret is just complicating things unnecessarily.
I guess so, but then, when you consider some of the way cryptics were treated in the past, there's no guarantee that if people knew about us properly, things would be better.
Yeah, I guess you're right. That could just lead to a whole new level of discrimination. So how many vampire students are there at the school anyway? It sounds like there are way more than I realized.
They still outnumber the rest of the cryptics, but there are way less than there used to be, actually. There's always been a really large vampire community in Pine Hollow, but a lot of them pulled their kids out of the school after that incident.
I mean, that's understandable. Let's see. No. 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 There we go. Stone Circle Academy is home to an awful lot of cryptics. It's known in the community as a safe place for cryptic children to go, for one, and the admin go out of their way to get cryptic kids to the school so they can be with others like them. They offer complete scholarships to those who can't afford the tuition as well. Of course, not everyone chooses to go there, so not every cryptic in Pine Hollow goes there.
It was a mess. The school came pretty close to being shut down permanently. Now there's just Mark, Adrian's group, Elliot, and some underclassmen. A little more than a dozen total.
Wow. I can see why he was so scared. Mark, too.
I really do believe Adrian didn't mean for it to happen this time. But if you're uncomfortable with it now that you know the truth, we can tell Velos right away.
No. I don't think it'll be good for Spencer to get caught up in that. I want to give Adrian the benefit of the doubt for now.
Okay, then I agree.
Now we just wait for him to wake up. I've been listening to your conversation for the last 20 minutes, trying to find the opportune moment to introduce myself. I'm awake. I nearly jumped out of my skin at the sleepy-sounding voice behind me. Spencer was standing on the bottom step, rubbing the back of his head. He was disheveled and still looked half asleep. But hey, he wasn't freaking out or hitting anyone, so that was a plus.
Sleepyhead finally wakes up.
What are you doing here?
Hey! Those are literally the first words you're going to say to me. You've been back for nearly 2 weeks and you haven't even said hi. Good grief, get this guy some coffee.
I don't drink coffee. He came into the kitchen shooting me a glare.
You were talking about vampires.
Glad to see you're still doing the spying on me thing. Allie stepped between us, holding her hands up.
Okay, no fighting. We said we were going to explain things to him, not fight with him.
You're in on all this too?
In on this? Jeez. I think you have the way wrong idea about what's going on. Maybe you should have a seat and let us explain.
What happened yesterday? My head feels horrible.
Long story. And I'd rather start at the beginning.
I'm listening.
You're just going to stand there by the fridge glaring at us the whole time?
Feels safer than sitting next to you.
Man, I can totally see why you always want to strangle him. Has he always been this crotchety?
Yes.
Spence, you were way cuter when you were a kid. I mean, you're still attractive, but...
Oh my god, Allie, this is not the time for that.
What? I'm just saying.
I really don't know what I expected from you two.
Excuse me?
She pulled at his cheeks, pinching hard. He let out an undignified squawk and tried to pull away.
You're being awfully bratty. Wake up on the wrong side of the bed?
Allie, please stop flirting.
This isn't flirting.
Yes, it is. And it's kind of creeping me out. Spencer finally managed to pull away from her. He glared at me, rubbing at his face.
Do I get an explanation at all? Or are you just going to try to distract me until I forget?
When did Spencer turn into you?
Enough already!
Fine. You want an explanation? Magic is real. The Paranormal Mysteries Club is full of supernatural people. Allie's a witch. Mark's a vampire. Adrian too. And he accidentally almost ate you.
Wow, that was your way of handling it delicately?
He can handle it. I have a bruise on my face. He doesn't get kid gloves anymore.
Well, I knew some of that from your journal anyway. And you're Faye.
I could already feel my eyes starting to twitch. Then why were you demanding an explanation?
Then again, I knew that before reading your journal. I just didn't have the word for it until yesterday.
How? How could you have known that? I didn't know that until last week.
Yeah, right. I know that's a lie.
This is why we can never just talk about things. You keep acting like I'm the one keeping secrets. You're the one who hints at all this stuff that you never explain. What happened 5 years ago, Spencer? What really happened?
You know what happened.
If I knew, I wouldn't ask.
Okay. Chill out. Why don't you two calm down before someone else gets smacked in the face? Nora? Why don't you take a break and let us chat for a bit?
Fine. I started out of the kitchen, but I paused in the door and shot him a glare. But you're going to tell me what you know. I've been agonizing over this whole thing, trying to figure out the answers to a lot of questions. Also, I can help you. If you somehow know something, you are going to tell me. I left them there and stalked to the front door.